director of the Third Republic and municipal expert Paul Berkowitz joins us now for a discussion around these developments. Thank you so much, Paul, for your time this afternoon. So let's talk then about, the KZN and Western Cape by-elections. But I want us to start in, KwaZulu-Natal. I mean, how surprised were you about the outcomes of these results, given how all eyes were on the MK party? But it was, in fact, the IFP that managed to win the highly contested by-elections in several wards, of which many belong to the ANC. I mean, your reaction?
Well, thanks very much, Unati, for having me. Good afternoon. I was a bit surprised, I won't lie, after obviously the biggest story out of the election last month was MK's performance, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. So for the IFP to continue, and I just want to clarify that this trend of the IFP winning wards of the ANC was clearly established before the election in May, and it's interesting to see that it's still continuing now. It is a bit surprising. You would have expected MK to have more momentum, but hindsight being 2020, we can see that the party has spent a lot of its energy since the election in the courts, fighting the results at the national and provincial level, and maybe taking its eye off the campaign work that needs to happen for local government by-elections.
So now we know, of course, that this now makes it a hung council with the ANC and IFP both holding 17 seats. And by that, I'm talking about Umzumbe municipality. Just talk to us about what are we likely to see in this particular scenario?
Nati, I think what's important is the question, is the government, the coalition at national and provincial level, the one that includes the ANC, DA and IFP nationally and at KwaZulu-Natal, is that going to be enforced and filtered down to the local government level or not? Because if it is, this is a fundamentally, this is a very different reality from the one we've had for at least the last 20, 25 years, where the ANC and the IFP have been on different sides of the aisle, where they've been neck and neck, and it's often been the smaller parties, the EFF, the DA Al-Jamaa, that helps either the ANC or IFP to form a majority. If this coalition holds nationally and provincially, and if the ANC and IFP work together at local government level, then MK's job becomes a lot harder. If MK wants to win any power or representation at local government level, it's now got to chip away at a coalition that has 80% plus of the seats. But that is a big if.
Yeah, and just staying with the MK and how difficult a path it would probably have to navigate, particularly in KZN. I mean, what do you then draw on its performance, given that during the 2024 provincial elections, the MK party was the most popular party in Umzumbe municipality, and in contrast, the ANC won by 70% in the 2019 elections, I would think. I think if my records are correct. I mean, the MK coming in at 40% in this vote.
Well, the ANC is still obviously having a bad time of it at local government level, as we can see, Unati. It's still losing wards to the IFP. But if those two parties are part of the same coalition and that happens at local government level, then the ANC can breathe a little easier. It does mean that there's probably going to be discussions over which of the two parties does what. And it probably increases the IFP's bargaining power at national and provincial level. Because at this point, given the numbers, given the fact that there's some interesting trends across all of KZN by-elections yesterday, most of those municipalities were won with less than 50% of the vote. So a plurality, not a majority, exactly the same as MK. Getting 45% of the provincial vote, but not being in government, being the third largest national party, but not being in government, means that in this era of coalition politics, it's not enough to be in the lead. You've got to be able to form part of a coalition. At the moment, MK has no power anywhere politically. They are not represented in government on any of the three levels. And if this coalition holds, they're going to find it very hard to be in power anywhere in KwaZulu-Natal. But again, a big if, and I suspect we will still see the coalitions at national and provincial level take a few twists and turns.
Now, going into, the 2024 general and, of course, provincial elections, the Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, of course, were, just some of the top provinces that were highly contested. Let's shift our focus now to the Western Cape, in fact, to Bedford West in the Central Karoo, where the DA says they win there is very historical. I mean, they essentially take and shift power away from the PA-ANC and the Karoo Democratic Force Council Coalition. Just your sentiments around that particular by-election?
Well, what happens now, Nati, is that the DA has a clear majority. They've got 7 of those 13 council seats in Beaufort West. And that is the first time it's happened in at least 2 election cycles. Is it historical? I'd have to go back and check what happened, 10 or whatever years before. But it does mean that the DA doesn't need to be in coalition with anyone. And it is, again, a bit of a surprise that the Patriotic Alliance did so badly, losing 2 of those 3 wards to the DA. And if this is, again, not so much of a surprise because the results yesterday were reflected somewhat in the election last month. But this could mean, when we look back in a couple of months, if this trend continues in the Western Cape, that this could be the DA taking the momentum and the ascendancy across the province.
I want to talk about something else, Paul, and I hope you have a response for us for that. I mean, when we look at just who makes up some of these councillors, post-2021 elections, the IEC, in fact, revealed that, female councillors only made up 37% of elected councillors. Now, this is despite more women than men having registered to vote in every province in that election, and I think similarly to what we saw in this election. Why then is South Africa still falling short, of gender parity, especially when we speak about councillors?
It's a very good question, Anati. I'll do my best. You're quite right that when it comes to participation politically, women outstrip men at every level. 51% of the population is women, about 53% of registered voters are women, and 55% plus percent of the vote of actual votes are votes cast by women. So why is the representation so bad? And why, when there is representation, let's say at national government level, does it not really translate into different policies? I've got the broad general answer that our political system broadly reflects our societal values. There's a structure of patriarchy. There are issues where, because of that, maybe women who run as ward candidates don't end up getting elected. I do not have those stats on hand, but it is a problem that we keep coming back to, and I don't know if there's an easy solution.
Absolutely. But Paul, thank you so much for your time and unpacking those by-elections for us. Of course, this is where we have to leave it for now. Thank you so much. Paul Berkowitz, there, Director of the Third Republic and Municipal expert.